Casual Magic has been brought to you by CoolStuffInc, where you can get cool stuff. Use the code CASUAL to get 5% off of your sale. And then also by Coalesce Apparel, where you can get really cool t-shirts and stuff, and use the code CASUALMAGIC to get 10% off your sale. And by Archidekt, a deck hosting website that doesn't really sell anything, but they like me and I like them, so kindly use them. And now, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Archidekt, Coalesce Apparel, and CoolStuffInc. It is also brought to you by my dear friends at Quiver, who have made me one of their ambassadors, and I should start putting out their code more so that people can go and buy Quivers, because frankly, they're my favorite carrying cases out there. Today, I have a very special guest. I mean, I say that, and it's like 117 episodes or whatever of this show. And I'll be honest with you, there's only ever been one real special guest, and that was Morrow, and the rest of us have just kind of been here. But next tear down special guest, actually, somebody who I've known on Twitter now for almost like 8 years or something. It feels like 5, 6, 7 something years. One of the deep Vorthoses, one of my dear friends, Orcish Librarian. You might know him better as he's a guy who posts like fanfic of flavor text for cards randomly, and also really great cosplay pictures from the days gone by when we could have cosplay pictures. And I don't know, I just really enjoy him. It's been really fun, and this is my show, so I get to have my friends on. Hello, my friend. Welcome.
Hello. I would love one of these days to be introduced as an unspecial guest, or
Yeah, I mean, nobody's not special.
or like the Rent-A-Center version of the special guest.
You're my budget brand special guest.
Yeah, I'm the store brand special guest.
Yeah, you're the explosive vegetation to my migration path. Wait, no, that's not the budget version. You're the worn power stone to my soul ring.
when your parents say we have special guest at home, I'm what they have at home.
But the thing is, though, like, you actually have a really interesting take on Magic, and you have a different and cool way of approaching it, which I just really enjoy.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I hope the take is that it should be fun and we should laugh at it and have fun with it, because I feel like that's synergistic with the podcast.
Yeah, right? Like, I feel like too many people take Magic way too seriously all the time. And I mean, God knows I take it way too seriously all the time. But it's more that it's like, it's a fun game. It's a game that's supposed to make you smile and laugh. And there's a million different pieces of these cards that are cool.
Yeah.
Why can't we just enjoy every segment of it? Like, I mean, some people are like, oh yeah, you know what? I don't care if it's a gray featureless card with just rules text on it. I'm like, no, I think even you, Mr. Jaded Man, would still be sad if there was no art, no flavor, or whatever.
I appreciate that it takes all sorts to make a world, and I'm sure that there's someone out there who actually is like that, but I feel like that there's just an element of like sort of like intellectual spiky posturing in that when people say that. Like you don't really mean it. You're trying to represent something about you in terms of like how you view this game as a purely intellectual exercise for your massive logic brain machine. But it's like it's not true, and I don't think anybody actually feels that way, as evidenced by the fact that I feel like the intersection between the people who say things like that and then the people who complain that the new art all looks too digital and it's not as good as the old art is like a perfect circle. So
right,
like for not caring that the art is on the cards, people then manage to have a lot of opinions about it.
Magic fans have opinions about things, it turns out.
Opinions are held.
You know what? It was funny. The other day I decided to run an experiment, because one of the weird things is that there's people who follow me on Twitter who follow me because they know I'm on the CAG, and they've hunted me down and they've followed me for years and years. And yet I'll post something like, I'm not sure what this card is for, like, because sometimes Magic will print a card that's like weird and it's got like rules that are just, or like a legend that's got a lot of complexity built into it that might like point towards a very unique way to build a commander deck
Mhm,
that is not something that I'm normally playing with, and I'd just be like,
mhm.
hmm, I'm not sure how best to utilize this card because it forces you to think in different ways and like orthogonally approach the format, whatever. And people will be like, well, you see, the card does this because it says these words on it. And I'm like, I, as it turns out, know how to read. And I'm familiar with how cards work. And so the other day, I decided, I was like, because I was talking to my friend Wheeler, and we were like, I am tired of people just trying to like expect like I don't have reading comprehension.
Mhm.
And he's like, you should go post lightning bolt and say, what does this do? And I was like, you're gonna light my mentions on fire for like weeks. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, fine, jerk. And so I did. I posted a lightning bolt and I was like, I don't understand this card. Why would anyone play it? And fully half of the respondents were like, how could you not understand the greatest burn spell of all time? It does 3 damage to anything for 1 oh my god, what like, have you ever played Magic? I'm like, "Oh my mother in
Well,
heaven."
it can't target a treasure token. How good could it possibly be?
It doesn't even draw you a card. At least
Yeah, it
Ember
doesn't
Shot
draw you
draws
a
you a
card,
card.
doesn't make any treasure token. I would love for you to just, like, lean all the way into that one of these days and just, like, fully play along and be like someone's like, "Oh, it could do 3 damage to anything." You're like, "Why would I wanna
What?
do damage to
What do
things?"
you
Like,
mean damage? Like, I
yeah,
win by milling people out. Damage? What this
yeah.
is damage?
I mean, I could play explain to me how this is better than Stream of Life, which could gain me X life. X
Right?
could be a number that's larger than
I
3.
mean, like,
So, like,
dude, you're playing a lightning bolt. I can beat it any day of the week with just a circle of protection or a healing solve. How good could that card possibly be?
yeah, it was in the same cycle as Healing Salve,
Yeah,
therefore they are equally good
equal
cards. Equally
and
good.
and it's just like, wow. Like, I mean, let's set aside it's me. Let's just think about the fact that there's people who think that there are Magic players who don't understand what a lightning bolt does.
I feel like the experience I have all the time is that on those rare occasions when I make the mistake of tweeting an opinion about Commander or something, and I've learned to phrase things by saying, "There's no good reason for X, Y, or Z." And immediately, all of my replies are people saying, "Well, obviously, Orc, the reason for this is that they wanna make money." And I'm like, "Yes, I understand that
That
that's the reason.
like,
I didn't
look,
I didn't say there is no reason. I
we
said there's
all
no good
understand that this is a
reason."
capitalism. We get it,
Yeah,
folks. You're buying cards. We can just
I
set that aside.
I am fully aware that I live in a society. Every time I look out the window, I'm reminded of how much society there is out there.
It turns out Magic wants to
Yeah.
sell us cards, and so they make new cards to sell us. That being said, why does this specific design exist?
Yes.
And they're like, well, to make money. I'm like, okay, now that we've got the tautology out of the way, can we actually talk about the card? Um,
And I'm immediately sympathetic to that too because anybody who works in the games business understands like how miserably difficult it is to make money in this business, and I never begrudge
oh
anybody
yeah, seriously, dude.
grabbing doing what you need to do to grab that cash, but it's there are ways to do it and there are other ways to do it, and it's it's
Like, look, man, you and I have both been in the games industry for a
yeah.
very long time, and we both understand that sometimes you have to make Barbie horse adventures in order to pay for your art project, right? Like, I understand that sometimes you need to microtransact in order to pay for server
Yeah.
upkeep. I also understand that sometimes you have the highest profiting quarter of the year and then also have to raise your prices by 11%. Okay, I don't understand that one, but um, but that being said, like, look, it's a card game that you have to buy packs, and they're like, "Well, you could just proxy." I'm like, "Okay, I could. We could
Yeah.
all just proxy,
Mhm.
and then the company goes out of business." Or, I mean, look, I'm not gonna. I don't want to get into that because who
Yeah.
cares? Like, you guys can all make your own decisions about proxies and not proxies and the ethics behind it. That's neither
You
here nor
you
there,
don't
and it's
want
not
more
really my
people to
problem.
yell at you on Twitter?
Dude,
You didn't get
it
enough
has
of that
gotten
from
to the
Lightning
point
Bolt?
It has gotten to the point that my Twitter feed algorithm doesn't even show me all the replies I get anymore. Like every day I turn it on and there's like 150 new like notifications or whatever. And I'm like, after like certain threshold of followers, that thing is just unusable. And I'm
Yeah.
like, damn, how many things have I just missed because Twitter decides I don't need to be yelled at for the 38th time today? uh,
Well, the other thing that's always depressing is that it's always, like, whatever the stuff is that, like, you work really hard on and you find really creatively engaging and you put your heart and soul into it, whether it's the podcast or anything else, that's always the stuff that gets, like, 10 interactions, and then the moment you say anything even, like, mildly critical, that's when everybody suddenly starts, retweeting it or engaging it, or that's what
you know,
pulls people out of the woodwork.
it's, I mean, like, dude, it's easy for me, like, the things I get the most routine engagement, I mean, okay, it's different for me because I'm also on the Command and Rules commi I mean, not Command and Rules Committee, but the, CAG,
Mhm.
and so, like, God, I wish I was on the Rules Committee. Well, maybe actually, honestly, maybe I don't wish I was on the Rules Committee. Being on the Rules Committee seems like it would be what it is now, but worse,
Yeah.
because I don't have anybody I can just deflect off to.
Well, you've already had a preview because everybody assumes that you can just make these
Everybody
decisions
assumes that
yourself,
I just,
so
like, wave my hands and their favorite deck is banned. But no, what I'm saying though is, like, I can make random posts and just like I posted, I don't understand why people play Tarnished Citadel. It seems like
Mhm.
paying 3 life for a City of Brass and doesn't seem great. And that got like 900 replies to it. I'm like, okay, so you all have opinions, CDH players, thank you. But like, I post a Scryfall random every day, and that routinely gets the most solid, like, interactions and engagements. And all it is literally a card I pluck from the sky at random with a smidge of text about whatever I'm thinking about the card at 7 in the morning.
I love Scryfall so much. I use Scryfall Random to do flavor added, and I love it's so easy to use, and I love the fact that I've been playing this game since, 4th edition, and that there are, like, I'll still find, like, Scryfall Random will still serve me up cards from, like, Urza's block that
Mm.
somehow I've never seen, despite
You
the
know,
fact that I drafted triple saga draft twice a week for, like,
right?
3 months when I was a teenager, and
You
I
know,
still see cards that I've never seen before.
it's wild because sometimes I'll random into a card and I'll be like, I own the product this card came from. It is in my, like, card collection right now. I have
Mhm.
literally never seen this card before, you know,
Yeah.
because I don't remember every one-off rando card that was in C15 or whatever the hell it is, right? Like, it's just it's wild how many, I mean, there's like 25,000 Magic cards, and you just hit random, and suddenly you get something like Elemental Augury, and it's like, "What the hell was that?" It's like, "Oh, a Grixis card
Yeah.
from Ice Age? Okay, well, I
That
guess."
see, that one I remember because that one was in, again, blast from the past here, at the very first, Duelist Invitational, which was what the Magic Invitational was before it was the Magic Invitational, back when that was still a thing. Um, the finals, it was Mike Long against Ollie Rade, and Mike Long played
Ah,
a, Elemental Augury deck in the
is
finals of
that
the
the one he
first.
cheated with?
Well,
No, that was Prosper,
I
the
assume that he cheated with every one
every
of his
deck.
decks, but
Ah, Mike Long. There's a name that a lot of people don't know and don't need to ever think about.
uh,
Um,
just go back for any lawyers listening to this. Go back and append an allegedly to everything I just said. Don't sue me, Mike Long.
uh, Mike Long. Yeah, I wonder if he still plays Magic. I should go hunt him. He would be a fun interview, wouldn't that?
Yeah, there you
Like,
go.
no, can you tell me how many Prost blooms you can fit into your lap at any given time?
I know that I wish I could remember where this was, but at one point, again, it was Mark Rosewater when he was trying to make the case for Mike
Oh
Long
God,
in the Pro Tour Hall of Fame, and I feel like he was
he was
Mara
the
was the
only
one
one.
person beating that drum for the longest time. One of the things he said that kind of blew my mind was, so again, eventually I'm going to get off this subject, so it's not just Rob and Shivan talk about magic stuff that happened in the 1990s.
You know
Um,
what, man?
like Wizards of the Coast used to run an official game camp that was in Seattle, and it was like if you were between the ages of, I think, 13 and 16, you could attend game camp. You flew out there for a week. You lived at the campers lived in the dorms at the University of Washington. This is back when the Wizards of the Coast Game Center, like the giant arcade in downtown
Mm.
Seattle was still a thing. So every day the campers would go to the game center, and like people like Mark Rosewater would come and talk to the campers. People like Richard Garfield would come and talk to the campers. And the first year that they did it, they wanted to have they I guess discuss Mark Rosewater said they discussed the idea of having a Magic Pro in residence at the camp,
Hmm.
to like interact with the campers and like help them play Magic, and that they seriously discussed having Mike Long be the pro in residence
What?
at the
That seems
first
like
ever
a
game
bad
camp,
idea.
because apparently like he was really good in that capacity, like was good at teaching the
He
game, was good at interacting with people.
That's the thing, he was deeply charismatic.
Yeah,
He was really I mean, there's a reason why people hated him and loved to hate him, because the dude was charisma, and he was
yeah.
entertaining, and he was interesting,
and and
and
I and I vaguely
very
remember
good at Magic.
and I vaguely remember, which is one of the things that always
Yeah.
blows my mind about that, like,
When
when
you
you
see,
see
like,
like people who are
cheaters
that good cheating, it's like, why do you need to do it?
like
In every facet of life, whether it's sports or business or any of these
yeah,
things,
it's
like
like,
you're
"You are already one of the best players of all
Mhm.
time. You don't need to do this.
Yeah,
You can win without this."
yeah. And I think it was Rosewater said, he's like, one of the reasons we specifically didn't invite Mike Long to do this was because we knew we wanted him as the bad guy, and we thought it would undermine his
Credibility as a jerk.
credibility as our heel of the
Man, you know,
as our heel of
Rosewater
pro play, if we invited him to be the pro in residence for the game
Rosewater has a
campers.
lot to answer for, but setting Mike Long up is just one of those things where, like, man, this probably sounded a lot better in your head than it did in the actual impacting people in the game. Like, if works if you're doing like wrestling and you have like, it's already scripted and this is a soap opera that we have written out. In actual tournament play, that is just that's not okay. But
Yeah, I mean, it really paid off with that ESPN2 contract.
boy, man, I
To
remember watching that.
Yeah,
That was fun.
it's not the
Um,
worst thing I've watched on ESPN2.
you know what, man? There have been a lot of random summers of watching people play bowling with the small balls,
Yeah,
candlepin bowling or whatever on
yeah.
ESPN2, or like
Fake New Englandy bowling,
yeah,
as I
or
like to
like just
call it.
random like ESPN2 had some jank on it. Like, okay, you know what?
I have watched Scrabble on ESPN2. I have watched
Yeah,
Dominoes on ESPN2. I've
right?
watched miniature golf on ESPN2.
When they made it, they were just like, we did. It's like weird to think of, given how many sports there are, that they didn't have
Mhm.
enough content to fill ESPN2,
They
that they
they
were
were like,
reaching
"Let's
out
put"
for like chess tournaments and
yeah.
things.
They were like, "Let's just put Keith Olbermann in a leather jacket,
you know, so
and
now that
and
we've
there's
gotten
ESPN2."
way afield, let's pull back like 4 million
Yeah.
steps. So, I should probably explain to the people. So, who are you? So, like, here's the thing. One of the things that I enjoy about you, aside from the fact that we're both, game industry veterans,
Yeah.
and the fact that you worked at Harmonix, right?
Yeah, for about, 8 years.
Oh
Basically
man,
from Rock Band through to Rock Band 4, which is how I
that
measure time, is in rock bands.
you know what? During that era, I was unemployed, so I also measured time in rock bands. That was like right before I got my gig at Sony, or something. I don't know. I played a lot of rock band in that era.
Me
Like
too.
it. Well, I played more. I think one and two, three had the keyboard,
Yeah,
and the keyboard was fun, but it wasn't as rad as two was. Um, but still, though, Harmonix is like one of my favorite companies of all time.
yeah.
Obviously, they made one of the best games ever in amplitude and frequency,
Mhm.
and made some of my favorite. Introduced me to some of my favorite bands, like Freeze Pop. Um,
Yeah.
that must have been an awesome gig.
It was. It was, and I'm not gonna pretend like it wasn't without, like, all the, like,
Come on, man. You and I have both been in the game
game
industry.
industry stuff
We
that
know
comes
that all
along
game
with it,
industry
yeah.
jobs are just sitting at your desk playing video games all day, acting like a Mario counselor on
Yeah,
the Nintendo Power.
I walked in the first day, and they handed me a PS2 controller and said, "Can you please tighten up the graphics on level 3?" And
Dude,
I did that, and, you know, that it paid that, and then I turned to camera and said, "Can you believe that I get paid to play video games?" my parents will never believe it. And then me and my best friend high-fived and winked, and then the title card came up for a non-accredited college that probably doesn't exist anymore. So
It's funny because, like, my first day at IGN, I
yeah,
walk in the doors, and this after I've already been in the games industry for a minute, and they handed me an Xbox controller and said, "BioShock just came out on Xbox. I need you to beat it right now so that you can get the new, like, 10 minutes of extra footage they put at the end of the Xbox version that wasn't in the PlayStation one." And I'm like, "I've never held an Xbox controller before, and I've never played BioShock
yeah,
before." And they're like, "Good, you've got a day, go." Let me tell you, after that, I have yet to touch a BioShock game because I basically put it on easy and followed the arrows because I could not. I had to just beat it. I couldn't
yeah,
sit and do the story, and I was like, I'm never playing another one of these Ayn Rand games again. Um, but boy, the games industry. I think the worst was when I was at PlayStation, and I was making trailers for E3, and we had like Gran Turismo 5 was
hmm
coming out or whatever. Oh, the trailer was coming out, and we had to send uh something like an 18 terabyte basically, it was like an 18 terabyte video file back and forth between
hmm
the US and Japan overnight to get them to approve every last
yeah.
change. Because, like, oh no, the art is bleeding on this one. And they're like, okay, like, we need to re render it and resend it 18 hours later. I worked 17 days straight, 20-hour days, and then we had to literally run from the Bay Area to LA, like, hand deliver the
Yeah.
cart with the thing on it while the president of Sony is on stage giving the presentation, plug in the cartridge of the video so that he can turn around and say, and then to have the thing disappear for my sizzle reel. And then I
The
slept for like a week.
yeah, the old sneaker net solution.
Oh, dude, you know what, man? Games industry, it's
There
it's fun. It's fun.
there were a lot of I can think of a lot of instances of, someone running to the airport and getting on a plane, to, like, physically carry something out to E3, like, after the rest of the team had already gone out to E3, and they're like, "Yeah, the demo's not ready, but, we're gonna be on the first plane out that we can be on."
Yeah,
And
God, dude, the amount of times I've had, like, vertical slices be like, "Okay, well, try not to let the player go past this one border or it'll crash the system."
try try not to let Xbox executives accidentally hit the pause button on the guitar when they're
Oh,
demoing
God.
the game.
Or just have 2 people who know how to play the game sitting underneath the stage doing it.
One of the only times I ever worked at a trade show was I went out to GameStop Managers Expo, the year that we were putting out Rock Band 4.
Mm.
And again, I think this is one of the things that people who don't work in the industry, or even people who do work in the industry, but they've never worked on the community side or the marketing side, like they think that like this is a sounds like a fun cushy gig. The company flies you out to some place like San Francisco
Oh,
or Las
God.
Vegas, and you spend a week there, and you get to eat at restaurants and stuff like that. And until you've actually done it, you have
Eat
no
at
idea.
restaurants, that's
Yeah,
cute.
no idea how grueling it is. Just like the whole time you're out there on the show floor, like you have to be on, you have to be friendly, you have to be talking to people. If
Your voice is gone, you have no
if you're
water,
demoing a
your
rock
heat
band
was
game, you
blocked.
have to sing. You have to sing. Somebody told me by the Killers, 100 times a day because that's the song that everybody wants to play. Um, or,
It had
or,
a
or
really fun drum
yeah,
line on that song, though.
or as one of our community managers started calling it, that bleeping Killers song.
The
It's I remember getting back from that event, and especially for me, who's like a borderline germaphobe, like that was an absolute like. And this was when too we had these were like the final hardware wasn't ready yet, so these were like the prototype guitars for Rock Band 4,
Oh,
and
man.
they went through batteries like it was nobody's business,
Yeah,
and
and there are,
like
like, 16 batteries in there or something too.
yeah, and we had so it was like constantly like the batteries in one of the guitars would die, and then it's like one of us sprinting, out of the ballroom at the Venetian or wherever the convention center was to like the nearest CVS and buying like
Like,
every
why didn't
double A
yeah, I'm
battery
like,
they
why didn't
had.
you just have, like, bulk boxes of batteries with you?
I remember we showed up at the event, and like the partners we were working with to like build the booth and everything, we were like, "Do you have batteries?" And they're like, "Yeah, don't worry, we have batteries." And we got there, and they're like, "See, we have batteries," and they had like one 8-pack of double A's. and we're like,
That's not.
it's like, "I'm going to the CVS right now because
Yeah, we're
this
gonna
is
buy, like,
not a
every
good
battery
scene."
you have.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, I remember I worked at E3 with Up when I was a nascent journalist, and
Yeah.
one of my first gigs in the industry, and we had some exec came up with a cool idea of having a big glass box for our booth that would be where all the journalists can sit and type up all the reviews and things, and people can see us working as they're going by. However, there was no ventilation there, and there were like 17 to 20 full-size PCs so that we could do our work and upload stuff all the time, and we weren't basically not allowed to leave that box, and I was just dying.
So you
Like,
were
my
basically a zoo animal.
I was a we called it the fish bowl because it was literally just a fish tank, and I would, like, post notes up saying, "Please send water," and my friends would go and run out and get some, like, scrub food, and I'm like, "Why am gonna die?"
At one point at Harmonix, when the company had gotten like, Rock Band had taken off and the company had gotten so big so quickly, like, we had 2 different offices, just across the street from each other, and we were cramming people into whatever space we could put them in, including, like, we took over the basement in one of the offices was in a building that had, like, a Walgreens on the 1st floor, and then we were up on the 2nd floor, and then we took over the basement underneath the Walgreens. Um, and this was when, the Microsoft Kinect had just come out, and we were doing a bunch of motion games on Kinect. And so they packed everybody down who could fit into the basement, and I was sharing, I'm gonna call it an office, but it was literally a closet with another QA lead. We were both in there, both trying to do, like, Kinect testing in in a closet. So it was literally, you couldn't, there was no space to move around, let alone dance or any of the things that you needed to do. And it was so hot in there. We were dying because it was the middle of the summer and there was no air conditioning in the room, and we were just dying in there every day. And finally, at one point, like, my co-lead, like, looks up at the wall and is like, "Why is there a piece of cardboard taped to the wall?" And she
Oh,
pulls it
no.
off, and behind it is the air conditioning vent.
Oh, no.
And the because the person who had that closet before us was one of our artists who was really tall. He was like 6'8", and so the vent was at such a height that it was just blowing straight into his face, and it bothered him so much that he taped cardboard over it so it wouldn't keep blowing air into his face. And then nobody told us it was there when we moved in, and so we died in there for like a whole summer, just like sweating through like 3 shirts a day
Oh
when we
my
could have had air
god.
conditioning the whole time.
Oh my god. Oh, god damn it. I can see that, and it just hurts me. It hurts me so much.
And it's again, it's
Oh
like
god.
these are the things, like, I remember, like, the PS3 dev kits threw off so much heat. Those things were like space heaters.
Yeah, boy, they
And,
did.
if you had like 5 of those in a room together, like, someone put a thermostat on the wall at one point, like, we were blowing like 100 degrees in the
So
room.
let me tell you what
Yeah.
happened when the PS3 we got a PS3 dev kit at Up, and,
Mhm,
my boss, the EIC, he kept it in his office in his cabinet next to the Xbox 360 dev kit. Now, the way these things worked, if you were around in 2005 or whatever, is a
mhm,
PS3 had an exhaust, so it would pump out, like, turbo jet engine heat,
mhm.
and the Xbox had a fan intake that would suck air in to cool the, system off. And so what ended up happening is, like, his kid one day was just playing around with controllers, and hits the start buttons on these things
Yeah.
and left them overnight, and we came back in to have a red ring of death and the glowing lights on the PS3 because it basically made a vortex of heat. Like,
Mhm.
the PS3 would just jet engine it out, the Xbox would suck it in, shoot it back out even hotter, and it was just vortexing into this, like, we stuck a thermometer in there, and it was something like 135 degrees inside of the cabinet,
Yeah.
and he's just like, "Oh, that is like $25,000 worth of equipment we just blew up, and we're lucky we didn't burn the office down."
Yeah.
But this is all well and good
Yeah.
Magic the Gathering.
To go back to go back to your question from like 15 minutes ago, I feel incredibly fortunate that in my career I've gotten to work on games that I feel like were constructive and fun and pro-social experiences where
Yes.
there were things that you could feel good about making and you could feel good about playing, and I feel like I've been incredibly fortunate in my work.
Yeah, because it's funny, like, now that I think about it, a game of Rock Band is a lot like a game of Commander, in the sense of, like, when I was playing Rock Band at my peak, we would be inviting our friends over every night
Yeah.
to have Rock Band night, or, like, every week to have Rock Band night on
Mhm.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we would jam and play Rock Band for 4 hours and just BS with each other,
Yeah.
and then when we started playing Commander, it was the same crew of people. We would come over, we'd play a couple of things of maps, and then, like,
Yeah.
start playing a game of Commander,
They
right?
don't
Like,
love you like I love you.
God, dude, I have that damn drum line, the
Boom, ba-dum,
bass.
boom, boom, boom,
Du- du-
boom,
du-
boom,
du- du- du-
ba-dum, boom,
du- du-
boom, boom,
du- du-
boom,
du.
boom. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, that song, I hate so much, like, the vocals are so dumb, but it is so much fun to play.
Yeah.
Like, it's a chew lane of DDR, of Rock Band songs. It's like,
Yeah.
I hate it, but boy, howdy is this a fun to play. I don't know, my favorite was the fact that on Rock Band, it rebalanced all the audio tracks
Yeah.
differently than the way that the album would. So when I'm
Yeah.
playing my REM songs, it makes Mike Mills's basses way louder,
Yeah.
and those bass lines are some of my favorite bass lines in
Yeah.
music.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
like, playing, like, "Losing My Religion" bass is like, oh, it's such transcendent. I
Yeah.
loved it. But yeah, we played a lot of maps, and we played a lot of Commander, and
I
let me tell you, those maps, they don't love you like I love you.
Expedition Map doesn't love you.
Maps. Yep.
I yeah, I remember when we got, the first, group of Duran Duran songs came in, 'cause I think it was, we got, Hungry Like the Wolf was on disc for RB2, and then we also got, Rio and Girls on Film that came in at the same time, and those eventually were DLC, and I just remember,
Yeah, I bought that.
those songs came in, and, Eric Brocious, who was our, head of audio at the time, and just it is like, this is one of the coolest things about working at Harmonix was there were all these, like, wonderful musicians, like, people who had, been in the Boston music scene for decades, had also been game developer, like, a ton of people who worked at Looking Glass Studios back when Looking Glass Studios was a thing.
Mm,
People who were rock journalists, people who were rock historians, people who just all these connections, like all this music history and all these connections to music. And so our audio director was a guy named Eric Brocious, who is a fabulous guitar player in his own right. Was in the band Tribe, which was a really great Boston rock band. That was always like that one like Boston band that everybody assumed was gonna like break it big and just become like the next, the Cars or
mm,
Aerosmith or whatever, and like always got close and never quite,
mhm.
made it to that level of like mainstream fame. Um, but just a fantastic guitar player, fantastic musician, and great game developer too. And I just remember when the Duran Duran tracks came in, his comment was just, "Oh, good, finally the bass player gets to have some fun."
Oh, man. Look, audience, I will be honest with you. Half the reason I brought my friend Rob on is because I really want to talk about Rock Band, one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm sure there's some magic we could talk about, but
I
we
mean,
should probably talk a little bit about magic.
I
But
mean, I think that they're similar in that when they're working, it's like Rock Band is a pro-social gaming experience, and I don't
yeah,
have an academic definition for that, but kind of the
but
way
it
I think
is
of it
though.
is it's a game where my enjoyment, my fun is directly bolstered if the other people I'm playing with are also having fun.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Rock Band,
Yeah.
and just like Magic and
Mhm.
Commander, you can play one player,
Yeah.
but one player is not nearly as fun as when you've got a
Yeah.
group of people who are sitting there and jamming out together. Because it feels
Mhm.
like my ideal game of Commander when we're all getting to do the thing we want to do,
Yeah.
and it comes to an end, and the end result is we all want to do it again. When you
Yeah.
finish Rock Band and you play a solo and the drummer gets to go off and the bass and everybody's like jamming, and you're at the end, you're like, yeah, let's jam another one. That is, like, the height of gaming to me.
And I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about, like, what were the things that changed over the course of making the Rock Band games that made it more pro-social and more fun, and I think the biggest thing for me, and this people may hear this and think, "Oh, that seems so minor," but I think it's by far the biggest change that had happened in this series was defaulting to having no fail on.
Yeah.
like originally failure was the default state. You could fail out of the song. And then I think we did Lego Rock Band, and that had no fail because it was specifically targeted at a younger audience, and we didn't want young kids to be playing and constantly failing out and quitting the game or having a bad experience. And at some point, like having taken that step, like the conversation changed to, well, what is the purpose that failure is actually serving in this game, and why isn't no fail just the default? And it was
Mm,
wild to me to
mm.
think about this, because if this, and I'm glad that this was back in 2011 instead of 2022, because the whole get good thing wasn't really a thing yet, and if, God
And
forbid if
especially in
that
a game
happened.
like Rock Band, right? Like,
Yeah,
you can prove your excellence at Rock Band by playing the hardest
yeah.
difficulties anytime you want.
Well,
Like
and the thing about that I think we came to realize about failure was that whatever gameplay purpose it did or didn't serve, it was a major social deterrent to people experiencing the game and having fun with it. The fear of failure, and
yes.
specifically in a group setting, being the person who caused the band to fail, made it
Yeah.
so that people didn't want to play. They didn't want to try a different difficulty than the one they were used to. They didn't want to pick up a different instrument than the one they were used to playing. They didn't want to play songs that they weren't familiar with.
Right,
Because
because
if that happened, you could fail out and then it was your fault. And you felt bad about it.
mhm,
You
mhm.
felt like you let the band down. And taking that out of the equation and giving people the freedom to just do what they wanted and have fun and not have to worry about that performance pressure opened it up so much more than I think anybody even realized going in terms of people would try new songs, they would try new instruments, they would do silly things.
Mm.
And I think that, yeah, like that was, I was thinking about back at this the other day, and that was the thing that just jumped out in my head.
Yeah, because it's true though, because like, when I remember when I used to play, like, Guitar
Mhm,
Freaks a lot and Drum Mania, the old Beat Money games,
mhm,
and you'd be trying out a new game, like, the new version would come out,
mhm,
and there'd be 3 of you, and you put in, like, $5 worth of quarters or whatever to be able to play,
mhm.
and if you fail, that fails the team,
Yeah,
and that feels real bad if you just dumped in all your tokens. And Rock Band especially too, it had that same kind of like, "Okay, we're all jamming, we're all jamming, we're all jamming,"
mhm,
and the drummer suddenly loses a beat because sometimes these songs get
yeah,
real rough, right? And you don't want to be like, when it's no fail mode, you've just like, it's, you can
yeah,
keep playing the song
yeah,
because it sucks when the song ends, or
yeah,
when like suddenly tracks start dropping out and it starts feeling
mhm,
weird and sounds weird,
yeah.
and you get the weird parappa effect or something.
Yeah, or
Uh,
or you just get unlucky and, like, you're doing a random set list and it just, like, throws up
yeah.
green grass and high tides at you, and
Oh
you're like, "Well,
God.
there go that's the end of that,"
Or what
you
the
know?
hell was that? There's a long Christian song that was the like, yeah. There's some of those that are just like really, really, really five skull difficulty.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know what though I do appreciate about that, and I promise you, we will go back to Magic in a minute. Is that it introduced me to a lot of bands and stuff that I'd
Oh,
never heard of
yeah.
before. Like,
Absolutely.
especially when I got like the German audio pack or whatever that had
Yeah.
Monsoon from
Tokyo
Tokyo
Hotel.
Hotel. I love that
Yeah,
song. I love that song. I loved playing that song, and I looked him up, and
yeah,
I was like, "This is awesome." And like, I would have never gone to look for German boy bands,
yeah,
like, or like, The Who, which
yeah,
for my generation is not like a band that it's like a band our parents listened to.
yeah,
And I was like, "Holy crap, these guys are
yeah,
really, really good."
yeah, no, so much you listen to stuff and it's like, "Wow, this is, this is really good."
Yeah, it turns out like some of these people could actually play. Oh, like
Yeah,
Silver Sun Pickups, which is one of my favorite
yeah,
like bands. Oh man, God, I love Rock Band so much. I spent
yeah.
thousands of hours playing that. Oh my God,
I
I miss Rock Band.
this goes back to, like, just kinda like the fan culture that exists around these things, and just like the again, like the impossible job that people who work in marketing and community have. I remember when we did like the I think it was like a Who 12 pack came out on
Mm,
DLC, and we announced like the Who 12 pack, and immediately, like, there were people again, this is back in the day when there were forums and message boards, and that was how we interacted with people. Like, there were people all over
ah,
the boards
those days.
screaming like, "Where's Teenage Wasteland? how could you put out a Who 12 pack and not include Teenage Wasteland? Where's Teenage Wasteland? It's like I was looking at one of our community people, and I could literally see like the like internal fight that was going on, not to just start screaming at everybody. You see that song on the list called Baba O'Reilly? Why why don't you type that into YouTube? Give that a listen for 30 seconds and then come back and we'll talk. Because there was like an entire like all these people who are familiar with that song because it was on like the opening credits for a CSI show, or they heard it on the radio, and
Teenage
everyone just assumes it's called
Wasteland.
Teenage Wasteland,
Yeah, right?
and nobody knew that it was called Baba O'Reilly.
Well, I mean, how many songs are there like that in the world that have,
Yeah,
like, the name has no relation at all to the
yeah,
damn song, and it's not the part you remember anyways, and it's just like, "Oh my god, what is it?" Uh, Santa, like the city in the sky. Anyways,
yeah.
um, what kind of Magic do you play?
I mean, nowadays Commander. It's
Right?
well, no,
Yeah.
Commander and Cube. Commander
Mm.
and Cube. And it kind of goes back to like having reached a point in my life where I feel like
Spirit
I
in the Sky, that's the song I was thinking
yes,
about.
yes.
God, I hate that song. It's like it feels interminably long, and it's so hard.
by by Norman Greenbaum with with one of the great guitar lines of all time, with just all that
Oh
fuzz and
god,
reverb on the
it's
guitar.
so hard.
I also I forget which I think it was maybe 1969, where it was John Lennon gave an interview in Rolling Stone magazine. It was like right after the Beatles broke up, and they were like asking him like what he thought about all the solo projects that his fellow Beatles were putting out. And he just like ripped every one of them, like shit talked all, you know,
Yeah, sure. That's
dirty
fine. Go ahead.
dirty talked all of Paul's stuff. Was down on George's stuff, down on Ringo's stuff. And the interviewer asked him, "So what music is out there that you like now?" And the song he said was "Spirit in the Sky." He's like, "I really like Spirit in the Sky."
How weird. I mean, it's a good song,
Yeah.
but it's not a fun song when you have to try to beat it to unlock stuff.
No, no, that was always the problem with was like the easy tier songs where you had to play them so much, or in the case of like working on the game, it was like what like Living on a Prayer was the first song that came in for Rock Band 2, and for ages it was like the only song in Rock Band 2, and so we all got so sick and tired of Living on a Prayer that for like a year afterwards, if I would hear that like Woompa Woompa guitar line start up, literally my eyelid would twitch. Oh, no. And the people who had it even worse were, like, the poor people who worked at GameStop and, would have, like, the
Oh
demo
god.
kiosk
Oh god.
sitting right next to the checkout counter, just playing the same 15-second loop over and over and over and over again of, like, More Than a Feeling or whatever, to the point where,
More than a
yeah, you,
feeling.
like,
Yeah,
hear it in your night. Boston, that was a great example of a band. I feel like so many people discovered Boston from playing Guitar Hero and Rock Band, like
there are so many random, like, Americana songs that just
yeah.
showed up because but yeah, Rock Band was like I think people nowadays don't quite understand just how big the reach of the Plastic Instrument Cartel
Oh my
really was
goodness.
in the mid 2000s. Like that was one of the great, like fundamental,
Yeah.
one of the most popular game series of all time, of at least of that console generation.
A Alex Rigopoulos and Aranagozi were on Time's list of the 100 most influential people
Yeah.
the year that Rock Band came out, along with like presidents and senators and Nobel
Well, it's
Prize
wild because
winners.
like Guitar Hero had been out for a while,
Yeah.
and Guitar Hero was fine, but when Rock Band came out and suddenly you had the ability to do the whole thing,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my god. Now, mind you, my personal favorite games are still Amplitude and Frequency, just because I think the song lists are really, really good in those.
Yeah.
But and it's just also the way of playing those games of like doing the pattern matching and
Mhm.
unlocking the songs and just the innate like remixability and the fact that you can
Yeah.
organically develop those tracks yourself. I I adore it. I adore those games a
It's
lot.
it's almost like, people in game design talk about, the flow state,
Yes,
where there's this balance between your
the Tetris
skill and
effect.
the challenge,
Mhm.
and you enter that space where you're almost not consciously thinking about what you're doing, you're just performing.
Yeah.
And like rhythm gaming is so just
Like,
laser targeted at that experience of being in that space in the same way that, like, live performance or, musicianship is.
mm,
And it gets at the same kind of like deep reptile brain satisfaction.
like, that's the thing, like, I one thing that people don't know about me is that I was, for, like, 10 years or something, a hardcore D&D DDR player and
Hmm.
a hardcore rhythm gamer because it really scratches that itch of, like, emergent gameplay of music, of generative sound that I'm helping create. And the thing about frequency and wave and amplitude that worked out is you would like do a segment of the track and then it would autoplay the rest of that instrument.
Yeah.
And then you would switch to the next track on the
Yeah.
list and you'd be able to do the pattern match and then get into the
Hmm.
song. And what I loved is that you could selectively skip a track and go over to the next one, and suddenly you've only got the guitar thing and the like bass two, and then a vocal, and suddenly it makes the song sound entirely different.
Yeah.
And you can put on a fully remixed performance for whoever's sitting there listening
Yeah.
that turns the song and tortures it into a different way. And this is also one of the reasons why I enjoy playing Commander,
Yes.
because in this way you've got an emergent gameplay of you can selectively decide. That's why I guess more importantly, this is why I don't like playing with tutors, because I
Mm.
like having this top of the deck serve me different
Mhm.
chunks of this software that I can then emergently play and make you appreciate a brand new way of looking at the same deck that you've played 100 times.
Well, and I think to me that's one of the fundamental appeals about Commander as a format is that it's a large deck format and it's a singleton format. It has that variability kind of baked into it where, as opposed to, something like 60 card constructed where the goal of that the goal of 60 card constructed is to have the best plan A and to sculpt your deck so that you execute plan A with as much reliability as possible. Four ofs of all your important stuff, draw, filter, all those things. You're trying to execute plan A, and if you're doing it right, the games are going to play out similarly to each other.
Mm,
This is why, for people who play constructed, variability is the enemy. 60 card constructive or
yes.
competitive, variability is the enemy. Whereas one of the things I love about Commander is that you get into game states that you've never seen before, or the card the
Yes.
card that you forgot was in your deck because you haven't drawn it
Right.
in the last 5 games,
And
suddenly pops into your hand.
my favorite is
And
when, like, you're sitting there with 3 other people and they play cards, and those cards suddenly change the way your deck works in ways you did not
yeah.
anticipate, expect, or even understand could happen,
Mhm.
and suddenly this one thing you're doing is reverberating in 65 different ways, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Holy crap, what did I just do?" And that is the joy of this game.
Well,
Um, yeah,
and like one of my favorite commander cards is Umbilicus, which is an
Umbilicus?
yeah, which is an artifact from Urza's Saga, that says, during your upkeep, either return a permanent during every player's upkeep. They either return a permanent they control to their hand from play or pay 2 life.
Yes.
And I love this card. I've loved this card since it came out back in 1998, because you can do weird,
Oh,
silly
that's
things with it.
weird.
Yeah, and I love this. I play it in like, like I have a Baron deck that I call Baron's Bouncy Castle. Because his ability is a bounce ability, and so the deck is designed to a large extent around, things with enter the battlefield triggers and, ways to bounce things back to other people's hands, bounce them back to my
Which
own hand.
Baron? The one from 21 or the
The,
one
the
from
the the
Urza?
new the new one.
Mm,
Yeah, the Baron Talarian
Tolarian
Archmage.
Archmage.
Um,
Yeah.
and I love Umbilicus in that deck, just because it lets you do weird, fun stuff every turn. And like every time I talk up Umbilicus on Twitter, like someone will jump in and be like, "Oh, that seems really dangerous to play in Commander because so many people have enter the battlefield abilities. Like
Yeah, but that's the
you're
fun!
helping out your opponents." And I'm like, "Yes, but that's fine. I like that it hits the table and everybody gets to do weird stuff with it."
Like, half of the fun is watching people, like, seeing what people rebuy or
Mhm.
seeing what kind of nonsense, like, there was a card that was revealed in the Capenna set, which was something like, it's like that white card which, hang on, let me go and, pull it up and read it. It's a
Mhm.
white card that lets you, exile something, and then that player can play it again. Like, do you remember? Did you see this card?
Oh, is this the jailbreak, like, escape from jail or something like
It
that?
might be. Let me just really
Yeah.
quickly pull it up because this is a weird one. This is like a super neat. God, dude, why does Wizards make it so hard to find cards sometimes? Like, you
I
swear they
get
don't want to
upset
say
every
it.
time I Google a card name and it pops up the Gatherer page
Yeah, like
first instead of
I,
Scryfall.
I'm so angry that they have not updated Gatherer and they haven't brought comments back. Like getting like Aaron Forsyth's random comments of the day were one of my favorite things.
Mhm.
But oh yeah, so Aerial Extortionist. It's a
Okay.
4/3 for 5 bird
Mhm.
soldier. And when it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage, exile up to one target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may cast it.
Mhm.
Whenever another player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card.
Mhm.
This card is rad, first
Mhm.
off, but also I just love the idea of like I'm going to bounce something and you can cast it again and it might do cool weird things, but I'm going to get an advantage if you do
Yeah.
anyways.
And again, it's like it's the difference in mindset between like in a competitive 60 card constructed format where I don't know what my opponent is going to do with this. I hate that because I can't plan around it and I might let them do something good versus I regard I don't know what my opponent is going to do this as a source of excitement. I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, like, I don't care if they
Yeah.
do something good and win. I wanna see something cool. Show me something I haven't seen before, and I'm super stoked. Like, I don't know, it seems just more fun to me.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know I go over this a lot, and it's like my thesis
Mhm.
is that I just really, really enjoy watching people do really weird,
Yeah.
silly things with magic cards because I think it's just super fun. It's like I mean, there's like 30,000,000,000 cards in
Mhm.
Magic. I don't know them all. You don't know them all, but
No.
you have weird ones that you've put in your deck. Show them to me and show me the weird
Yeah.
things you can do. It
Especially
just seems
because half of
fun.
them have come out in the last 2 years when, you know,
Jesus, right?
so I'm
Like,
discovering new cards every
dude,
day.
every time I post a card and someone's like, "Oh, that's gonna be great for my Zamfir deck," and I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm not sure what set that came from. They're like, "Oh, well, it's not out yet. It's in the like, the 38th set booster pack commander release for the next set." I'm like, "How did you even?" Well, I already built
Yeah.
14 decks on Moxfield. I'm like, "Oh my god, dog."
Or the problem I have is I try to post, like, you know, like pre-2000 cards sometimes that I think would be fun in the format, but that I don't see much. And like frequently what will happen is I'll dig out an old card where I'm like, "Oh, this is fun. This would, you know, this seems like it would be fun." And I'll post it and someone will be like, "Well, isn't that just a worse version of this new card that I either forgot existed or didn't even know existed?" And it's like, "Yeah, kind of is a worse version of this newer one, but I still like it."
Yeah, I'm like, dude, there's a million different
Yeah.
reasons to play. Like, pick your favorite artwork. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
like the, you know, it doesn't matter if there's like, what card is awesome? Ruin in Our Wake. Do you remember this card from like
No.
Ruin? Let's see. Ruin in Our Wake is like
Mhm.
it's a fetch card from like I think it was
Mhm.
Zendikar. Ruin in Their Wake, maybe. Yeah, Ruin in Their Wake. It was from Oath of the Gatewatch, and it's like basically it's a
Mhm.
ramp card that lets you just either get a waste or get a ramp. It's like a really
Mhm.
bad ramp because it puts it into your hand if it's not a waste, and if it's a waste, it puts it into play.
Mhm.
But it's awesome because it's got Ulamog and Kozilek walking with their trail of like weird like ashes or like metallic stuff behind them. It's
Yeah.
a gorgeous card. It's one of the worst ramp cards there is for 2 mana, but it's beautiful and I would play it anyways just because why wouldn't you? It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And people are like, "Why are you playing?" Or like, I have a Homelands card in my Titanium deck. They're like, "Why are you playing this?" I'm like, "Cause
I'm
it's rad.
'Cause it's
Cause
the
it's a
best
card
set
you
ever.
haven't seen before." Like, I
Uh,
love playing cards that make people look at my decks and go like, "What?" Like, if you're picking up the card and have to read it and
yeah.
be like, "Where did this even come from?" Then I feel good because then I'm like, "All right, I've shown you
Yeah.
something you didn't know. So win or lose, you've come away with something cool."
And statistically speaking, 25% of the cards in Homelands are on the reserved list, which is a higher percentage than any other set. So I think that statistically speaking, we can say that Homelands is the best and most powerful set because otherwise, why would they have had to put so many of those cards on the reserved list?
Yeah, man. Winter Sky. We're never gonna see its like again. for that one red mana sorcery
Yeah,
that lets you flip a coin, and if you flip a coin, it deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. And
you're
if you lose a flip, everybody draws a card.
you're Soraya the Falconer deck.
You know what, man?
It's the only place you can get it.
For if you want that Daughter of Autumn, this is where you gotta go. Boy, Daughter of Autumn, man, I remember cracking that as a kid and being like,
Yeah.
"Who is this middle-aged old lady on my cards, and why does this card suck so much?"
I mean, I just like one of the cosplays I do over and over in various guises is I love to cosplay
Oh,
Iran
yeah,
the
we could have been
Relentless
talking
from
about your
Homelands.
cosplay and stuff.
And it's cause like
Wait,
he
who do you
I
cosplay?
remember him being like the card that I most wanted to open in that set. You know, it was like
Aaron the
Sengir
Relentless?
Autocrat was the actually good one, but I wanted Iran.
Dude,
And
Aaron the Relentless is awesome, though.
yeah,
He's a 5/2 with haste.
he
That
does work.
and he regenerates
Yeah.
for 3.
And I always loved the backstory on him is that he was a thief who I
That really is
believe
good art, man.
yeah. Oh, it's
Chris
wonderful. It's
Rush really
wonderful
just
Chris Rush art. I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but I think it was Chris Rush said something like the art description said he should look regal, crazy-eyed, and handsome.
he sure does.
And he nailed it. And I love that like part of Iran's story is that he's immortal now because of this spell that got cast on him. And so the reason that he's got like all those scars in his art is because at one point he escaped from a prison cell by cutting himself into pieces that were small enough to slip through the prison bars, and then just regenerating back together on the other side. And so that's why he's got like all those scars all over his face.
I mean, his flavor text is rad. It's like Aaron would be much less of a hassle if he were only mortal, says
Yeah.
Rayhan the Samite Alchemist. Uh, it's like Homeland is awful, but I love it. Like,
I Yeah, it's and not just because, that was when I started playing Magic and, I literally had
yeah,
that
right.
experience
We
where it's like,
spent a lot of
on
money.
yeah, it's like, on Christmas, it's like, "Oh, we know that you like this game, so we got you cards," and, not the revised boosters that you could still get at the
Although, you know
electronics
what card would
boutique,
be
but
really
the
good though?
Homelands boosters.
You know what card would be really good though is not on the reserve list. It's a Primal Order. At the
Mhm.
beginning of each player's upkeep, it does damage to that player equal to the number of non-basics they have.
Yeah.
That actually seems like it would be really, really good in EDH.
Yeah, that got some play back at the time too.
Yeah.
Um much like Iran was in a Pro Tour top 8. There is a Pro Tour top 8 version of Iran the Relentless, as I love to remind people.
Yeah, dude. God, they had to put 5. Well, I mean, look, they had one good Homelands card, which was Serrated Arrows,
Yeah,
and then like 4 garbage ones. But like, it's funny because I put Serrated Arrows into my Hapatra deck,
yeah,
and that's the reason I built the Hapatra deck because I wanted to have
yeah,
Serrated Arrows have a home, and I love that card. It's so much fun. Or like Renewal, which is like basically an old Harrow.
yeah,
Sack a land, put a new one into play, and then draw a card at the beginning of your next upkeep. I love that card. And everyone's
yeah.
like, "What is the hell is this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we played different cards back in the day. I'm old and I relish that."
Well, I think it gets back to how much the pro-social part of the experience is a function of expectations and attitude as opposed to actual game design. Um, and I think it gets to one of the points you're always at pains to make, which is that casual is a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can play just like you could play competitive Guitar Hero. You could play Score Duel. You could compete for high scores. Like there was always this Score Hero community that like that was what they were super into and that was what they cared about. And you can like Magic exists somewhere along that same continuum too, where you can have it be
I've
super
been to
competitive or you can
more
have it be super casual, and it's entirely a function of the expectations that you and everybody else that you're playing with bring with you to the table.
I've been to more bars than I can tell you of people of times where they were having score competitions where your whole band would come up, play Rock Band and try to get like the best score on
Yeah,
these. Like it was like modified karaoke or whatever.
yeah,
But sometimes you would see people just like killing. And
yeah.
I'm like, damn, you guys are Like, you should be just playing real instruments." It's like, but it's much easier to hit 5 buttons than it is to actually try to do strings. Uh, I still haven't got the hang of doing hammer-ons and pick-offs on those guitars,
I'm still bad at
but,
it.
like
Okay, I have one more story about this because back when the original Rock Band came out, this is back again. This is back in the era of ancient history, when if you went to GameStop to buy a game, they would try to sell you the strategy guide.
mm,
Um, and the companies that made the strategy guides would contact like had deals with the publishers and the retailers, and that would get them like access to the game developers so that they could get the content ahead of time, so that the strategy guide could come out at the same time that the game came out. And there was actually a strategy guide. There was like a Prima strategy guide for Rock Band. Like they actually made a Rock Band strategy guide, and one of the things that they asked for was high scores for the different songs, so that they could put like these are the Harmonix high scores in the strategy guide. Like, see if you can beat the developers at their own game. These are the developers' high scores. And because of like the publishing deadlines on all this, like that information had to get generated early so that they could print the strategy guide, write the strategy guide, and print the strategy guide, and ship it to GameStop. And at that phase in Rock Band 1 development, group overdrive was exponential. So if one player was in overdrive, it was 2x, two players,
yes.
4x, three players, it wasn't 6x, it was 8x. And
Oh.
4 players, it wasn't 8x, it was 16x.
Oh my god, your score would have been astronomical.
Yes, and so that was how overdrive worked at that point when they asked for the high scores for the strategy guide. So they sent a bunch of like a bunch of high scores to put in the
Oh,
strategy guide,
no.
and then subsequently the overdrive rules changed, and so the strategy guide was published with for several of the songs like these enormous scores in them that you could get back when overdrive was still 16, max overdrive was still
Oh,
16x,
I would've
that were absolutely impossible with the version of the game that shipped.
oh, no. Oh, no.
And it would like I fortunately, I think so few people bought the Rock Band strategy
Yeah,
guide
because what are
that
you
it
gonna do
wasn't a
with a
bigger
Rock
problem
Band
than it.
strategy
Yeah, no,
guide?
yeah, yep, yep. Have you considered hitting the notes when they come across the now bar?
Like,
You know,
it's a friggin' it's Rock Band.
yeah,
You hit the thing gets to the bottom, you hit the
yeah,
note. You don't even need a game fax for Rock Band.
yeah,
The only remember I think the only thing I ever used it for was to get what the next unlocks were.
yeah.
Because I was like, "Okay, which one should I play to try to get the things?" But, um, we spent like 3 minutes talking about Magic in this hour.
We can talk about
I didn't
magic.
talk about your cosplay at all. I didn't
Oh
talk
man,
about the pictures you've taken. I didn't talk
yeah,
about the flavor ad you do every
yeah,
day. So we'll probably have to have you back on to actually pretend to talk about the game that
yeah.
this podcast is ostensibly
In
named for.
any time.
But it turns out that since you and I both basically share an industry, sometimes it is just fun to kvetch about the olden days
Yeah,
when making games was something that I wanted to do with my life before it got beaten out of me by the games industry.
you know what? It's
Dude, let me
I,
tell you, man, when I was working as a game journalist,
yeah,
There was there was, like, a period of, like, 4 or 5 years where I would come home and not play games, because I was like, "I
hmm
have to do this all day, and I can't play a game without looking at it for score and graphics and
yeah,
playability and how many words can I get out of this preview or whatever."
yeah,
And then it's just and you're spending so much time trying to grind through like, people don't understand, you'd be getting paid like jack and have to
hmm
beat a 60, 80, 120-hour RPG
yeah,
in, like, 3 days and
hmm
then write copy to try to
yeah,
get it out to print or get it onto the website or whatever. If you have a hobby and you turn it into your job, what that means is you don't have a place to run away to when your job
yeah.
sucks.
Yeah, you took the thing that used to be fun and you turned it into work.
Yeah, that's why I moved to the movie industry
And
because
and
I am indifferent to film.
and there are people who can do that. Like there are
Bless
people
them.
who they have the mindset that that can work for them. Like there are people who it can literally be true for them where it's like, get a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I'm so happy for those people, but they're not everybody. And like I know for example that I'm not that person. And I feel like that's something that comes up a ton even especially in the magic community where you have people who are get into the game because they're having fun with it, and then maybe they start streaming, maybe they start, writing articles, doing whatever it is that they do, and there's sort of this implicit pressure that comes from just the again, waves vaguely out the window in the direction of society, that well, if you're spending that much time doing something, and especially if you're doing it in a way where other people are consuming what you're doing, you should be finding a way to make money off of that.
Mm.
Or like that should be the goal. Like the way to achieve happiness is to take the thing that you like doing and find a way to make that your job. And that's not true for everybody. Like, I know I've learned the hard way that that's not true
Mhm.
for me, and there are people for whom it is, and I'm so happy for them.
I
People who are
mean,
like, I
if you
want
can
to do
do
magic
that,
stuff as a career. I want to be a content creator. I want to be a streamer. I want to, work in magic design or whatever it is. And for people who genuinely that's their ambition and it makes them happy, I'm so happy for them. But I also see, you talk to people all the time who are like, I don't want, like I who get burned out doing this because
yeah.
they it starts out
Well,
as something
because
you do for fun, and then it turns into something that you do for money. And
well, that's the thing. Once you introduce money into this,
mhm,
suddenly your entire game changes. Anything
mhm,
like like your interactions with other content
mhm,
creators changes, your interactions with the audience changes,
mhm,
because suddenly you're like, these aren't my friends. These are people who
yeah,
are going to take money away from me.
mhm,
These are competitors who are directly in this space. Or it's like suddenly you got the pressure of, like, for instance, this podcast I do, this is my hobby. This is not my
mhm,
career. And yeah, it makes enough money to pay for itself, which is great because then
mhm,
I don't need to think about it.
yeah,
But that way I can do things like have an hour-long chat about the video games industry
yeah,
with a friend of mine and not worry about what it's going to do to my numbers because I don't care.
yeah,
But if I was like, if this was my like day to day, if this is my career and I have to like, keep up with the homies, that means I'm going to need to start doing things like deck techs and start doing things
yeah,
like actually paying attention and set reviews and this and that and following the release cadence. And I deliberately set out not to do that because it was burning me out of
yeah.
magic. Like when I was doing that
If
on Commander, and it sucked.
yeah, if this was like Command Zone, like one of those like old timey vaudeville canes would have come on like
Oh yeah, like
5 minutes
oh
into the
no,
podcast and
this
just yanked me off.
3 seconds in, we would have been like, okay, we're starting over, and now you're going to tell me all about this flavor ad thing you do.
Yeah,
Like we're not going to be
yeah,
doing none of this.
deck tech.
Yeah, like, that's the thing, because like, there's different pressures and needs.
Yeah,
That's one of the reasons I deliberately set out to do it this way, so that I if it's an interview show, I can't sit there and worry about evergreen content.
yeah,
I mean, I can't worry about, like, now content, right?
mhm,
Like, we could be talking about New Capenna right now, but I would rather somebody come back to this interview in like 3, 4 years and be like, "Wow,
yeah,
Rock Band content is still the same freshness as now as it was then." Because who cares, right? Like, it's I can't turn magic stuff into what I
yeah,
need to do for my day to day.
yeah.
Otherwise, I will not want to play Magic anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's the
Ma-
bottom line, right? Like, you need
maps
somewhere to run to.
maps still don't love you like like I love you.
Hell no, they don't.
I always remember, and it's weird to me that this
Ma
the context I got this from was, of all things, learning to play golf. And something that always stuck in my head was a piece of advice my mom gave me once. She's like, learn to manage your expectations.
Hmm.
And I think similarly, um, Carolyn Hacks writes the advice column here in the Washington Post. And one of the things that she wrote in her column at one point that just lives rent free in my head now is happiness equals reality minus expectations. And I think that informs so much of how I interact with Magic nowadays. Is that I've gotten to the point where it's like I no longer care whether I win or lose the game. I no longer care if people think, oh, he's a good player or he's a bad player. God, why would you do that? That was such a bad play decision, or why are you sitting here, talking about REM B sides instead of paying attention to what's happening on the board state. And just like understanding what my expectations are for myself and how I'm going to engage with this, whether it's actually playing the game or engaging with the discourse, in scare quotes, or just like going to a going to an event back when events are a thing, and just going there to, cosplay and take photos and do, planeswalker karaoke after the event, as opposed to like worrying about, how am I going to get my tickets and how am I going to, cram in as many, last
Mhm,
chance
mhm.
qualifiers or whatever. And just, to the extent that, getting older has resulted in, ideally, hopefully, fingers crossed, a little more, getting older and, becoming a fuller person is, ideally, fingers crossed, resulted in a little more emotional maturity. A big part of that has been thinking about expectations and managing expectations, and I see how that bleeds over into what I do in the magic space.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh, man. This has been a really fun conversation, even if it wasn't directed or on topic in any way, shape, or form. But I've really enjoyed this because, like, I it makes me happy that, it it's rare for me to be able to talk to somebody of the same vintage as I am, of the same industry as I am, who can, like, we can trade stories back and forth. And let's be honest, you worked on one of my favorite games of all time.
we we
So,
can we can point at different sections of gray hair and
yeah,
talk
right.
about which game caused
Oh
them.
god, dude. Let me tell you about Uncharted 2 sometime. Did you know that game nearly shipped with all of the Hindi signs in the Nepali village backwards because
Uh,
nobody had read it until I was doing, like, a video on, like, stuff, and I was like, "Guys, all the graphics on this are inverted. So,
mm,
like, the letters are literally backwards. Can we fix that before shipping?" I saved the game. I'm just saying. Anyways, if people want to go and follow you on Twitters and or find out what you do or anything like that, where
yeah.
can they go?
I'm on Twitter at bibliovoreorc, as in
Every day he
an
does
orc
these
that
cool
eats
things.
books.
Yeah, every day he does these cool things with the same way I do with my Scryfall randoms. He randoms in, he finds a card and he puts a new flavor text on it. They're always either cheeky or insightful or story
Yeah.
related or funny. I really, really like them. We probably should have talked about them,
Oh,
but
I
that's
I
okay.
I love doing it, and it blows my mind too how like other people have picked this up and run with it now. Like there's other
It's
people
just
who do
so
them, or like
it's
anytime I post
cheerful.
something, other people chime in with their interpretations, and
I
I
love it. It
love
makes me
seeing
real
it.
happy.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, man, thank you so much for joining me. This has been lovely. As always, my friends, you can find me at Gear Reporting Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at Cool Stuff Inc. every Tuesday, or at YouTube whenever I decide to actually upload it there. And remember, it is not magic without the gathering, and we will see you next time.